Well, hello, folks. Glad to see you all. How nice to have a darn near full house. We do have more chairs. We can pull out more chairs if we need to. So as promised last month, this is Fun Finds in the Vault, and you will see our Moravian Music Foundation 60th anniversary symbol up here. Music Foundation was founded 60 years ago, just a couple of weeks from now. I think it was March 1st was our charter date. So we're almost 60 years old as an organization, and we're still finding things. So I have to say that this lunch lecture owes a great deal to Barbara Strauss and Dave Bloom, our two people working on the cataloging project here with us, because a lot of the discoveries were theirs. And I asked them, did they want me to talk a few minutes and then each of them to talk a few minutes? And they said no. I said, all right, then feed me stories. So they did. This has certainly been a team effort. And these are stories. Sometimes in a discovery, how you get there is about as much fun as where you got to. The journey is half the battle. And I know I only have a half an hour, so I'm just going to hit the highlights of some of the interesting discoveries we've been making. So starting with clarifying things and adding things to the information we already had. You know that teacher, pastor, and composer Johannes Herbst, in his spare time, copied more than 1,000 anthems by many different, mostly Moravian composers, along with a number of larger works. Well, Dave Bloom's been working on the Herbst collection catalog, getting it all online in ways that you'll be able to search from your home computer and see what we have. And several of today's stories are from that collection. Here's the first. Many of the anthems in Herbst's collection are assigned to particular occasions, and they tend to be festival dates like August 13th or November 13th or Christmas or things like that. But there's at least one that was written for a birthday, and several others were written for funerals. So Dave tries to identify the person to whom the piece was dedicated, if possible. So now this is Dave talking. H72 bears the inscription Zum Begräbnis des Bruder Lenhards on 4th of April, 1766. So Dave thought he'd put his librarian skills to find out who Lenhard was. That's what that says up there in the little tiny German script. He looked in the Dienerblätter. It's a multi-volume set of that we received from Herrnhut a number of years ago that has one-page biographical sketches of thousands of Moravian notables. Looked for anybody with the last name of Leonard who had a death date close to this. Tried all the variant spellings he could think of. And as Dave wrote, nada, zilch, zippo. Well, Herbst hadn't come to America by 1766, so he thought this piece by Christian Gregor must have been copied while Herbst was still in Germany. So Dave emailed Olaf Nippe at the Unity Archives in Herrnhut. And he confesses that he felt kind of dumb to discover that Brother Leonard could only refer to Leonard Dober, who with David Nitschmann began the Moravian missions in 1732. And sure enough, looking at the Dienerblätter, you discover that Dober died on April 1st, 1766. So now the listing for Herbst Collection 72 not only has that on it, but it also lists that it's Leonard Dober, whose funeral this was written for. Anybody searching in the online database looking for things about Leonard Dober will find this piece. So this is something we already had, but we just didn't have all the pieces together. Another story from the Herbst collection referred to two pieces by a composer named Kersten, K-E-R-S-T-E-N. Cataloger Marilyn Gombashi, working in the 1960s, had no other identification for the composer of an arietta and a chorus in an ode for August 29th of 1768. So, all right, one of the interesting things about today's cataloging work is the RISM database. What that stands for is the International Repertoire of Musical Sources. It's an immense online catalog, international catalog, that contains not only pertinent facts about thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces, but it also contains their musical incipits, the first few notes of the piece of music. And you can search on that. You can use that little keyboard on there. Whoops. we go back one, use that little keyboard, and put in the notes that you want to search on, and it will find pieces that start that way. And then you start digging around and figuring out, which of these 72,000 pieces that start D, E, F, G is the one that you want. Well, Dave did the searching, and he found that the composer is Johann Gottfried Kirsten, Kirsten, who was an organist, performer, and composer in Luckau, located between Berlin and Dresden. And of the 34 items in this database by Kirsten, 25 of them are in the State Library in Berlin, 6 of them are in Herrnhut, and 2 of them are in the Polish library, which was known to have music manuscripts from several Moravian congregations since World War II. And one more is in Frankfurt. So a number of these pieces are in Herrnhut. So there's an identification that we didn't have. All we had was a last name, and it turns out that it was the last name that was not spelled correctly. So there's another one. Here's another fun story. This piece is in the Salem Collegium Musicum collection, and it was cataloged as for voice and keyboard. Barbara Strauss was working on this piece, and she called me and she said, "Can you come down and take a look at this piece? It says it for voice and keyboard, but that doesn't look like a piano part." It's not a piano part. That's a guitar part. So a guitar is written on one staff, all in treble clef. That's how it is. So this is an arrangement from the Opera Der Freischütz for voice and guitar. It was cataloged as for voice and piano. That's just one of the very few mistakes our catalogers in the 1960s and 70s made. I've edited that piece, by the way, and I'm looking forward to playing it, doing it on flute and guitar with my guitarist friend, Brother Bob Peterson. So that's one sort of discovery that we've made, is where we've been able to add things or elaborate on the information we had and make a few corrections. Another sort of discovery we've been able to make is matching the right piece to the right composer. Maybe we had the piece, but we didn't know who wrote it at all. In the Herbst catalog, one of the pieces is attributed by Herbst to Hasse, H-A-S-S-E, but with no other name. With the tools she had at her disposal then, cataloger Marilyn Gombashi interpreted this as perhaps Johann Adolf Hasse, well-known composer of the 18th century. But it appears now that the work was by Moravian composer Christian Friedrich Hasse, who was born at the Moravian mission in Zarepta, Russia, received his education in Niski and Barbie, where Christian Gregor was one of his teachers. We also wonder if maybe he became acquainted with Latrobe, who also was teaching in both places. So we don't know that yet. Anyway, Christian Friedrich Hasse served in England at the boys' school at Fulneck, and also as a teacher, music director, and organist, wrote anthems for church music and published a 2-volume collection of some of his own works and those of other German composers. Among our collections, Moravian Music Foundation has a number of works by Christian Friedrich Hasse, and it would be interesting to see just what of his music exists in the British Moravian archives. That's a question we haven't asked yet. Still yet from the Herbst collection. This is not from the Herbst collection. This is Dave at work. He's not that old. But he was able to identify the composer of 3 previously unidentified pieces in the Herbst collection, again using the RISM, the RISM database. All 3 were contained in the Herrnhut collections attributed to Nikolaus Heinrich Kleinschmidt, and Dave identified them by searching those little musical incipits, the first few notes of the piece of music. And all of the items that are listed in RISM by Kleinschmidt are in the collections in Herrnhut. So far, in our online catalog, we only had one other reference to Kleinschmidt at all, and that was an anthem edited by Alice Caldwell from a source in Herrnhut. We do not have any other manuscripts by Kleinschmidt here that we know of yet. Well, okay, not only has Dave been hard at work, so has Barbara. She really isn't in jail. She really can get out of there. She's been looking into the fun of identifying composers and opus numbers while cataloging the Salem Collegium Musicum 178 collection. She discovered an inconsistency between the manuscript copies of 3 symphonies by Kreutzer and 3 symphonies edited by Robert King in the early 1980s. So this is Salem Collegium Musicum 178, and you can see the beginning of the first violin part right there. Well, Robert King identified these 3 symphonies as Opus 13. Well, matching the musical incipits through RISM, let's see. Let me skip on a couple more slides. And there's what RISM shows. Whoops, I hit the wrong thing again. See the little da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's that musical beginning. That's from RISM. Going back here, that's what you see over there. Da-da-da-da. The little the quarter note with 2 slashes through it is telling you to keep playing those as 16th notes. So that matches. Well, she also narrowed this down by finding a thematic catalog of Kreutzer's works and finding the listing there. Look at that, notated with all the quarter notes with 2 slashes through the stem. Somebody just didn't want to write out all those 16th notes. So she had narrowed this, she got this through interlibrary loan from UNC Chapel Hill, and so it really is Opus 1. And the title page of the text of the title page of the manuscript, all of this over here, is copied directly, word from word, from the elaborate title page of the first publication from 1777. Our manuscript indicates that Johann Friedrich Peter copied these pieces in 1786. I still wonder. 2 things I wonder. One is why Robert King thought they were Opus 13, because that's not indicated on our manuscript anywhere. I wish he were still with us so I could ask him. And the other question I have is, what's the source? Where did Brother Peter copy these from? In 1786, Peter was here in Salem. What was his source for copying these and all these other pieces of music that he copied? So just all kinds of interesting questions we have. I wish we could find more out. Another fun discovery that Barbara made, Salem Collegium Musicum 432 has only 2 parts, has a second oboe and a bassoon part for what appeared to be a quintet, because it's got the title Quintet Number 2, right up there. You can see Quintet 2, Quintetto 2. So we had second oboe and bassoon. Okay, who wrote it? How are you going to find that out? Well, this was printed. It's published. It was. And it's right here at the bottom of the page there, but I enlarged it so you can see the publisher's number. Barbara went searching online to find there is an index of publisher numbers. Can you believe it? I didn't know that. So she went searching and found there were 66 musical works with the publisher's number 1536. Yes. In that list, there were pieces by 2 composers, Mozart and Anton Reicha, with the word quintet in the title. So she went to the RISM database and searched Anton Reicha, found 85 works, 14 published ones, but didn't include any quintets. But there were 30 entries for quintets not listed as published. So she went looking again and discovered that we don't have the lead part, so she couldn't search the musical incipit. We don't have it, because those are only from the lead, the flute 1 part. But what she found was quintet number 14 in that list of 30 is in the right key, has the right time signature, has the same tempo markings, has the same melodic and rhythmic progression as these two parts. So she has identified these 2 parts as belonging to Reicha's Opus 88, number 2. Interesting. And she did some more searching for published works and discovered that sure enough, there were published parts of this quintet with the publisher's number 1536. So the unknown quintet was now identified as Anton Reicha's quintet for flute, oboe, clarinet, horn, bassoon, Opus 88, number 2, published by Simrock around 1817 or 1818. I wonder where the other parts are. So. Back to the Herbst collection. Herbst collection is cataloged in 3 sections. Part A is the largest part of the catalog, and it's got roughly 1,000 sacred anthems or solos or duets. Many of our modern editions of Moravian music come from Brother Herbst's incredibly accurate copying, and in his own day, many congregational music libraries were enriched by his work. This is part of Herbst A, 358.2, and it's the anthem, The Fruit of the Spirit. So there's the beginning violin part, there's the beginning flute part. The voices haven't come in yet. That's the opening of the thing. Section C is a small group of collections by genre, a book of keyboard pieces, a collection of songs with keyboard accompaniment, a book of chorales with some cross-referencing that we haven't completely identified yet, and 7 sacred songs by Gluck, Handel, and Sacchini, whoever he was. Section B, though, is a fun part. It composed mostly of complete copies of larger works, oratorios, masses, or cantatas and the like. It has La Trobe's Dawn of Glory in it. It has the Easter cantata by Ernst Wilhelm Wolff. It's got all the choruses from Handel's Messiah, several sorts of things there. But in this set, this is B, one of the sets in B that has a collection of 22 compositions, which Marilyn Gombashi labeled unidentified. Well, not anymore. Dave has been able to identify about 75% of these Singstücke und Motetten, singing pieces and motets, by looking through on the RISM database. And a lot of them are by Johann Friedrich Reichardt, a lot by J.A.P. Schultz, the guy who wrote Thou Child Divine, a couple by Carl Friedrich Foch, who was the son of court composer Johann Friedrich Foch, a colleague of J.S. Bach and Telemann. Carl Friedrich Foch, by the way, is the person who founded the Singakademie of Berlin. So, interesting. Our Moravian composers were certainly connected with the who's who in music of the 18th and 19th centuries. Now let's look on for future projects, things we've found that we got some more fun to work on. I understand that Philip is really excited about this one. It's a recitative and cavatina contained in Salem Collegium Musicum 98.1 and 2. It's listed as being by an unknown composer. Barbara is certain that it's by August Meyer, who had a recitative and cavatina of the same title published in the 1820s. So we're going to find a student who wants to do an edition of these. Another research project. We have a number of cantatas in our collection by Johann Rudolf Zumsteg, which were published in these absolutely gorgeous full scores by Breitkopf and Hertel. They'd be good candidates for making performance parts, somebody getting used to working on music software programs and wanting to take a full score and turning it into something that people will actually sing from. So as we find graduate students or scholars looking for interesting projects, that would be fun. And one more. Look at that. The Mozart's Requiem. We have a manuscript keyboard reduction and a set of manuscript parts for Mozart's Requiem. Now, the dilemma for the cataloger here. Barbara has been unable to match the German used in this edition, this version, with any other known German translation from the Latin. We don't know the source of the German. A copyist may have used as a source a Breitkopf and Hertel piano vocal score published in 1800, but the German text doesn't match up with any other German translation Barbara can find yet. And she doesn't know yet what our edition does with respect to the completion of Mozart's fragments. There's not been time for her to dig into that yet. These are worthy questions. I would like a graduate student to take on a project of looking at our copy or copies of the Mozart Requiem and what are they and how do they connect with anything else and how are they or are they finished. So many things we don't yet know. And another one, it looks like a possibility for a future Moravian Music Festival. Again, J.A.P. Schultz, a composer of Thou Child Divine, It's a cantata, Der Versöhnungstod, arranged from the slow movements of Haydn's symphonies and a string quartet. But the topic is the atonement, Jesus' atoning death, and there are choruses and chorales accompanied by alto, tenor, and bass trombones and organ, with an instruction with the chorales that say, sung by the congregation. Doesn't that sound like something we need to edit for a music festival? They're listed in the catalog as by Schultz and by Haydn, from slow movements of Haydn's symphonies. I can't wait to dig into that one. I may not give that one to a student. I might tackle that one. So with all these good stories, what does this tell us? First, it tells us we have an immense number of pieces of instrumental and vocal music that could be brought out to make up a concert today. We have a lot of pieces that are in miniature, symphonies and opera tunes arranged for 6 or 8 players. So you could do a Mozart symphony or even a later 19th century symphony with an octet. You can do opera tunes with a small ensemble, just a few voices and a few instruments. Things that would just be fun for people to do today. Secondly, one of the things that we have figured out is how incredibly quickly the music was transmitted from publication in Europe to manuscript copies here in America. It got here really, really fast. It makes me wonder if they invented fax machines or something. I don't know how they possibly got things over here. And like I said, we don't know what the sources were. Peter did all this copying while he was living here in Salem. From whom or from what source did he make those copies? I don't know that. But it sure got here quick. And this is not new information. We've known that for a long time, that music got here quickly. We've known for a long time that the Moravians were very much in touch with what was going on in the wider musical world, and that they were making use of music from all sorts of sources for their own purposes. They were using opera choruses with sacred words in worship. There was Pauline Fox did a study about 15 or 20 years ago of an entire, the major works, major movements from a Naumann opera, Cora. The Moravians took about 18 or 20 of those movements from that opera and put new sacred words to them and used them in worship. And they were obviously quite popular because copies are in all of the major American Moravian collections. So we've known that the Pietists in general had a reputation for being unworldly or almost isolated from the outside world, but that's not the Moravians.
Why should the devil have all that?
Exactly, right? Exactly. That's exactly right. Yep. And now I need to tell you some fun things. Part of Dave's work on classifying the book collection has meant checking copyright dates and basic facts about publications to make sure the catalog records are complete. And one way that specific publication is identified is by the number of pages in the book. That's a little sticky when it comes to hymnals, because very often in hymnals they'll number the few pages at the beginning and then they won't number the pages throughout, they just number the hymns. And then they maybe will number the few pages at the end. I know in the 1995 Moravian Book of Worship, we numbered the beginning and we numbered through the liturgy section, and we did not number the hymns. But the last page, the next page following that is not, if the last hymn is 816, the next page is not 817. The next page is the actual number of pages in there. So, but anyway, he was looking at a hymnal entitled Cantate Domino. It's a 1951 publication. 1951 publication of the World Student Christian Federation of Geneva. And looking at the end of this book, he looked at the last hymn to see about a page number, and found that the last hymn was The Grace of Our Lord Jesus Christ by Christian Gregor in English, German, French, Latin, and Greek. just a language or two here. This is a student federation, I guess. Another fun find that Dave came up with, he was looking through the book called Highlights on Hymnists, and he found that Maltby Babcock was the author of the hymn text, "This is My Father's World." And you know, someone was just asking me, when you open one of those boxes, don't you just sit and read and read and read? Well, Dave did a little reading, and I'm really glad he did. Well, Maltby Babcock was the author of the hymn, "This is My Father's World." And according to this book, in his youth, he was quite a champion baseball pitcher. And the story is told of his taking a bully by the nape of the neck and the seat of his trousers and pitching him over the fence. Dave observes this was obviously before Babcock penned the line that though the wrong is often strong, God is the ruler yet. Or maybe he was thinking we are the hands and feet of Christ. So anyway, Maltby Babcock. And one final story, why we should not rely on machine translation. There is a phrase that we ran into, that Dave ran into, "Und segnest deine Blutgemein in ihrem Tun und Ruhen." Now, the Moravians would translate this as something like, "Bless your congregation joined in your blood in their labor and in their rest." A machine translation came back as, "And bless your blood overheads in their tuna and rune." Yes, talk about making no sense whatsoever. Don't trust machine translations. Machine translations are neither poets nor theologians. So next month, you get Salem's 250th in music, a look at some of the musical gems of Salem's first 250 years. The first 250 years. We don't know what's coming in the next 250 years, but we'll take a look and a listen to some of the musical gems from then, from 250 years ago. That will be on Thursday, March the 10th. So Music Foundation's 60 years old, and we are just beginning the digging. Isn't it fun? Isn't it fun? Thank you so much, and I'll see you next month.